Good morning and welcome to the Senior Hour, which is sponsored by Comfort Keepers in-Home Care and Advanced Audiology. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host,
Dr. Jean Doria,
on KHTS, your hometown station. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, giving information to enhance one's quality of life. And our guests this morning, first is Linda Davies of the Domestic Violence Center of the SCV, and later in the hour we'll have Mandy Eglisida of City of Hope. Good morning, Linda. How are you doing?
welcome.
Good to be here.
How was
Good.
your 4th of July?
Good. Yeah. Stayed a little wet. Went swimming with my granddaughter, and then ended up having a water balloon fight with the neighbors in the neighborhood. Not at Friendly Valley,
Ongoing.
but at my daughter's house.
Sounds like fun. Yeah, I was going to say Friendly Valley.
No. No water balloons over there, I guess. No, it was good. It was very good. Stayed cool all day. That was the point.
Yeah, that's going to be our problem for the coming months, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to stay cool.
Yeah.
Keeping our seniors hydrated.
Right. Absolutely.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Speaking of hydrated, I need to have a drink of water. And you have some there, Linda.
I do have water
Yes,
here. Yes.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. So what should we talk about today? Fundraising a little bit for Domestic Violence Center, and the goals of what the Domestic Violence Center are. And there are many, aren't there?
Yeah,
that
there are.
affect our seniors in many ways.
Yeah, I guess I'd put a little bit together today. I mean, I always want to talk about the domestic abuse for elder abuse hotline that people can get to, which is an 877-477-3646 is what the number is. And also the fact that some of the statistics that show that 1 million Americans 60 years of age or older are abused in their homes each year. That's only one case in 14, so we really believe that that's underreported because a lot of times people aren't going to be reaching out. So to be able to teach, family members, caregivers, people what to look for, because abuse can happen by those people that care for them. That's kind of the sad part.
And many times the emotional abuse is not picked up on.
Absolutely.
Physical is.
Right.
But when you are emotionally hurting a senior or anyone, it's not readily noticeable.
Right. No, it's true. And it can be exacerbated by poor health or isolation, and people not believing, really, taking them seriously that something's happening. And that would be around the emotional. I mean, it's one thing to be able to see a physical abuse that happens and where did that bruise come from, or, something like that. But the fact that somebody's controlling either your medication or where you go or who you talk to or how your day is spent, or just making you feel like you can't do anything without them really needing, your approval from them, is another thing that's happening a great deal, I believe, with the elderly, as it happens with all victims of domestic violence.
But
that's
don't you
the
think
psychological.
Sometimes, though, as we get older and we start, we have our investments, we have our work, we have our nest egg, we worry that, we're holding on to those things, but then our family is worried that maybe we're putting it in the wrong place, and they look at us as we've done things all along in the same way. They're thinking that we're making bad decisions. How do we get by that in trying to evaluate somebody who is,
Using
not so
power
much
and control.
Using power control, but also just saying, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, is this good for your money? Is this going to be okay for you?" And sometimes people will perceive a helpful hint, and of course, some people don't have the tactfulness to be able to give those helpful hints in a way, and they get frustrated with their loved ones. So how do we figure out when it's a real threat and a constant threat, an ongoing threat, versus a suggestion? Isn't that more difficult to define and figure out? It can't be easy.
Well, I mean, I think what you're talking about is something that happens in all families at all times, people trying to give the best advice possible to someone. But at the same point, are you taking over? Is there that fear of, can they make the right decisions? And yet, unless you've seen, it's just like what we tell our clients who come to see us, is that they know what's best for them. And I believe that family members need to understand that their parents know what's best for them. And if you're having a conflict between the two of you, I mean, something I suggested before was that, there are social workers at the senior center. There are people that you could go down with and talk to. And that would be a way for someone to see whether, because basically we all have a bias, right? We want our parents to do the best they can. And sometimes what they're doing is just what they've done all along. Right?
Yeah.
Only now it's a red flag because we're getting more afraid because are they going to have enough money or are they making the right decisions? And they don't have as much time to kind of maybe fix it if they're not making the right decision, right? But we've got to still give them the confidence that the decision they make is the right one. So I always think that a third party is always a good way to go. Right. Somebody who can just listen and say, have you, or also I know there are resources out there too, even financial planners who could sit and talk with somebody as well and just say the two of them kind of get the information that they need to get so that they're learning it together. It's not that the family member is the one saying you got to do it my way, but let's kind of investigate what is the best way for you at your age to invest your money or to spend your money or to save with your nest egg. But going out and looking for people in the community. And when you find that somebody doesn't want to do that and somebody just wants to tell you what to do, then that would be where I would have a concern.
That's a red flag.
Right. That is a red flag.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you really want them to want to find the best resources possible. I think the other thing that happens, with aging also for our children is that we don't want to accept that our parents are aging and we don't want to accept that or we kind of like brush it off like it's never going to happen. So don't bring these issues to me because they're not really going on with you at this point in time. I think that's a natural thing, but I do think there needs to be more education for, as we age, for our children to understand what it is and kind of the frightening sides of it too, just the fact that we are changing. And even for us, it's scary that we're changing.
Right. And, one of those things is that, we always look at our physical frailties.
Right.
But, we also worry about, am I thinking correctly now? Am I going in the right direction? And of course, you might make some investments and boom, you're in the negative and that you perceive that as a problem. But sometimes you're thinking, I need to make, this money and figure out how I'm going to push my interests in the right way. And people look at it and say, that's not the right way. And so you have the dichotomy of you having the confidence and the wherewithal, you feel you do, but yet you could be failing, and so this self-doubt.
Self-doubt is the scariest thing.
I think it begins when you fall down for the first time.
Yeah.
And you're not, you're not even on Medicare because that's what happened to me.
Right.
And so you start doubting, going, hey, am I really physically okay or not? And then it becomes the mental part of it as well, and having that self-doubt. So I think it's good to have a third party, like
always,
you said, because especially the emotional, psychological part of this comes into how we make financial decisions. And, you don't want to turn around. Well, you can turn around and blame your kids that you were forced into something, but certainly you want to be able to make your own decisions for as long as you can.
Yeah, and you have to really, otherwise. Where are you going to have the confidence to just continue thriving and having a really positive life? You know what I mean? You don't want to give up those pieces that really make...
Yeah, that's independence, isn't it?
It is independence.
And that's what we want to all feel we continue to have, driving our car, living in our own home, all these things that, we sense and feel. I'm getting older, but this is the way I feel end of life when it gets there should be.
Right.
And that crosses every boundary in terms of finances, emotion, physical, all of that.
And I think we have to be careful too. I think that people who are older, because of wanting to kind of feel young, can be taken advantage of. There's lots of things out there that people take advantage of. Like even like young, I don't know. This is maybe my bias here now, but like younger guys with the whole thing about older women. But older women. Are you really interested in them, or are you abusing them in the sense of there money, or is it just, I'm going to say, a sexual relationship that could lead to some destruction down the road? And I feel like we still live in a culture that just supports let's stay young.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Instead of how do we embrace we're aging, you know what I mean? And how do we embrace it? How do we support one another? How do we make sure that we still have the interests or new interests like creatively aging is really what's about.
Creatively aging.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah, creatively aging.
It's interesting. I know my husband is sort of incapacitated. He's lost his driving abilities, and it's very depressing for him.
I can imagine.
It really is, because he used to play golf 3 times a week, fly his model airplanes, drive anywhere he wanted to, and now because of this medical condition, he's not able to.
Yeah.
And that in turn falls on me, and I think to myself, okay, Barbara, you've got to keep yourself in good health, watch what you're doing. And it's interesting, and I felt I had to get down on the floor to look underneath the cupboard in the kitchen. And Russ gave me the flashlight, and he kept saying, be careful, be careful. And I had to look in there to see where the plug was underneath there, the electricity plug.
Yeah.
And then I got back out, and I thought, okay, now, Barbara, you've got to get up. And that was, I had a hard time. I mean, I'm in physically good shape, but nevertheless, my limbs are getting older.
Yeah.
They're not as adaptable as they used to be.
Yeah.
And I felt to myself, okay, hold on to the sink and pull yourself up. And normally I just bounce up and away I go. But that's not the case anymore. I've realized now I'm getting older. I have to slow down. Slow down, Barbara. I do that to myself every day. I have to tell myself that. It's very frustrating.
Let's talk about going from the mental and emotional parts about abuse to the physical abuse, because many times you can see that abuse, but sometimes you do not.
Right.
And
That's
sometimes the only residual of that is fear, and that our senior might be living in fear, and that is catastrophic to me in terms of our seniors having to live like that.
Well, yeah, because an abuser will also know that you don't if you're doing physical abuse, or they're not going to show it'll be on a limb, or an arm or a back, or
where something is normally covered up.
Not something that's normally covered up. I think it's
very
just
true.
knowing, like, even for family members, knowing the caregivers, knowing the people, knowing in a sense, it's like running any kind of program where a human being comes in, whether it be a child care program or what. You see a bruise on somebody, you need to find out where that's from. If that person isn't talking to you about it, you need to kind of investigate, because asking, hey, I saw, did she fall? Did she hit something? Did she? Because it also lets the person who might be using abuse know that somebody's watching. And I think that for all of us, there needs to be eyes on people. I think that's the part that I feel the worst for sometimes, is if they're alone and their families are busy and nobody's coming in to visit, who is the person that's watching out for them? You know what I mean? And that really is something that I think is very, very important. And I don't know. I don't know as much about the senior center as I maybe should around this topic. We've gone in and we've spoken to. Pretty much spoken to seniors about if they know something's happening, to speak up about it, if they see something, if somebody stops coming, if somebody gets isolated, to really start paying attention to that and be able to make a phone call for somebody to go in and make a visit, make a well visit and find out what's going on. But I just think that as far as the isolation and the visiting of people, do we have people that go in and do, like, volunteers that go in and check on what's happening with folks in the homes? And
well, we do have supportive services at the senior center, and they do send people out, social workers out, to evaluate. And then almost on a daily, Monday through Friday daily basis, we have home-delivered meals. And those drivers, they're supposed to just deliver, but they do more than that, don't they, Barbara? That's
Absolutely,
what
they do.
they check in with people and see how they're doing.
yes.
See how they're
They may
doing.
be the only person that they see.
That's exactly right. And when I did it quite a few years ago, it was one of the most rewarding volunteer things I did, because, I take the carry the food many times into the senior apartment areas.
Yeah.
And you could see the seniors pulling the curtain back. They're ready for you.
Yeah.
They want you to come in.
Yeah.
And it is very rewarding, to sit down for a few minutes, make sure they're they have the food in front of them, and on occasion check the refrigerator to see if there are things in there. And I did that on a regular basis. Just, can I get you some ice water? That kind of thing. And it's very easy to do, and it's also very easy for a senior to not be as accessible.
But the other side of the coin is, sometimes seniors, most of the time, they're not being watched.
Right.
And that's a question that's ongoing, and there's a lot of fear with the kids who see their elder parent getting older and having trouble, putting them into a nursing home, a boarding care, assisted living, or trying to keep them even in their own home and maintaining safety. That becomes a worry and a problem with many of our those who are caregiving now for their senior parents. So, one of the solutions that, I had some patients at a boarding care, and they were fearful and worried about not only their loved one falling, but also of abuse. And they talked to the owners of the boarding care, and the boarding care put cameras in. And they put cameras in first to show that they're going to film everything.
Right.
Not in the bathroom, but they're going to film
Right.
everything in the hallways and in the rooms. And they had to get a legal okay to do that. Now, this was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And then the technology got so good that people were able to go on their own computer at home and see their loved one, that they were okay using the internet. And so to me, that worked. And the thing is, we don't quite have that now. I thought that was very creative and innovative of the boarding care to want to do that, to say, hey, we're transparent and we're upfront. But to be able to have that in assisted living, to be able to have that in nursing homes, and even itself, just have it in your own home to be able to look in on your loved one. We don't do that yet. And I'm sure there's some legal rules related to that. But that could be our solution, because when you tell a new caregiver, hey, you're going to be taking care of my mom in her house, and there's a camera up there. We're going to be watching everybody here, including her, to make sure she's okay. I think that tends to make people accountable to a certain degree and might help with quelling some of the physical abuse that we've seen.
And also, though, having people come in. I guess down the road, what I'd really love to see is more of a volunteer organization that does bring in people from the community that goes in and visits for the quality of life issues. That's something that's of interest to me personally, that there's, because that whole isolation factor, I think. And so if somebody just knows that somebody can pop in at any time, that's also a good way to say it. So that because sometimes I think no one else is coming in. I get the thing about the camera. I think that's important. I think what I've always thought, the only thing I worry sometimes about the camera is there may be some pieces that you see that aren't abuse, but you think, what happened beforehand. So it can raise some issues, but I think it's like that nanny cam, right, that people put in for their, So you just let somebody know that it's there, and that also can limit some of it.
It could be a deterrent.
Absolutely.
It can. And I'm curious, do you have any stats as far as in the Santa Clarita Valley and surrounding areas, the numbers of seniors who are or have been abused?
I think what we see mostly, we probably get maybe once or twice a quarter somebody who's over 65 that calls us. Okay, it's not the prevalent age group that we see is 18 through 35. That's really what we see. Yeah. So, and one of the reasons, sad to say, is that, well, when they're older, there isn't as much like, where are they going to go after? What are they going to do? Like, a lot of times our net is a safety net. So we're going to get you into transitional housing afterwards, and you'll have to work and you have a job, and that pays for your transitional housing. So a senior is kind of a tougher one for us, because we don't always know who's going to take them after.
That's
so
true.
We can take them and help them kind of get safe and get what they need, as far as, like, do they need to have reported this? Have they needed to get the law enforcement involved? Do they need a temporary restraining order? Do they need some of that? Sometimes do they need a respite just to figure out what they need next? We can do that. But honestly, I think more of that stuff goes through elder abuse. I don't see that we see a ton of older people coming into our shelter
So
system.
they call the elder abuse hotline.
Yeah, I believe they're calling the
And
elder abuse hotline.
I
And
see.
probably, like, our hotline number is 661-259-4357. And the elder abuse hotline is 877-477-3646. So someone can call our hotline just to kind of say, hey, do you think this is abuse? Do you think this is what's going on? Are there resources for me? Maybe they want to come to our outreach center and take groups. That would also be something. Maybe they'd like therapy. Maybe they don't quite understand what's going on, but coming to us, being in with a bunch of other women who are going through similar circumstances, even if they're younger, it still would be very interesting for them to understand what abuse is and to be educated on that and the red flags. But it's really different when it's your family. Like, I
Well,
think what we're
that's
seeing
true.
is that I believe is something that needs to be prosecuted. You know what I mean? Like, to call elder abuse, get somebody involved, because that's my fear, is that somebody's taking their money. Somebody's
true.
and they're fearful of reporting it because they'll be left alone. That is what breaks my heart. And I guess I was thinking this question, it's probably a terrible question to ask, but in 1990 we lived till 49 or something, I think is what the average age was. And now we live to like 80s and 90s. And
That's true.
it has added so much more stress onto a period of life, hasn't it? I mean, like,
Sure.
around having more money, around the health issues, around insurance,
That's
and all
right.
that.
You don't know how
You know, I never
much
thought
money
about
you
that.
need because you don't know how
long you're
you're
gonna
going to
live.
live.
That's right.
And so, but we all feel it's worth it, I guess, is what my question is. That sounds terrible. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember I worked in a continuity of care facility, and there was a guy, and I remember I was in LNA, and I was helping him get dressed, and he couldn't button his pants, right? And I said to him, I said, how is this right now for you? And he goes, well, after 85, it's a little harder. And he was like 95.
Oh, bless his heart.
You know?
Bless his
But
heart.
he's also somebody who stopped skiing at 80 because I told him he had to.
That's wonderful. Well, really quickly, since we have to sign up, tell us about the
right.
upcoming fundraiser. Really quickly.
Okay. So we have something called a Midsummer Dance Party, and it's actually just a night of fun, dancing. Jonathan Kraut, who does a dance, he teaches dance for the city as well as his own little dance troupe. He comes, he brings different dancers, and we learn dances that night, like Latin dances, the cha-cha, the salsa, we have line dancing, but you also have freestyle dancing too, because Jonathan brings the music.
It's a fun
It
night.
is fun. It's just
Really
fun.
is.
It's $20 at the door. It goes towards the Domestic Violence Center. And this year we're having something called a dip-off, which is not a dip-off like a dance dip, okay? But it's a snack contest, all right? And we actually have some fun little prizes that people are going to win for that. We also do a raffle. There's some really fun, like, like restaurants out in the area. And there's, like, we have Magic Mountain tickets and Santa Barbara Zoo in one package for a family. And then we always do like a kind of a cool basket from Pier 1 that has like kind of fun things to do on your summer patio. Okay, so that's happening on July 15th at 7 p.m. and it's happening at the Elks Club, okay, which is actually great. People enjoy it there.
Yes.
We have a really, really good time. So it's from 7 to 10 is what we usually do it for. So
Terrific.
That's
So-
a Saturday.
it's a Saturday night. Bring your dance shoes. If you don't have dance shoes, go in your socks. But it's
Be ready-
it's
be
a
ready
fun.
to dip.
Be ready to dip. Yeah,
Yes,
Be
yes.
ready to dip.
Thanks, Linda, very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Well,
It was
thanks for
Appreciate
inviting
it.
me. I
talking
always
to-
appreciate the two of you.
Yes,
So.
and we'll see you the next time you're on.
All right, great.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorey, on your hometown station, KHTS.